Hi there, and welcome to Scrimba's Introduction to Vite, the build tool for the web. I'm Sean from Scrimba, and our goal in this course is to help you become a super fast developer. How will you achieve that? By learning how to use Vite, the fast build tool for the web. Vite is all about being fast. That's why the creator of Vite, Avenue, chose the name Vite, which means fast in French. Avenue, the prolific open source developer, didn't just create Vite. He created Vue.js in 2014, Vite in 2020, and in 2021, he pitched the idea for Vitest, the testing framework powered by Vite, to the Vite team. Anthony Fu did most of the initial development for Vitest, and Vladimir Sheremet leads its current development. In regards to the idea behind Vite, Evan said in a recent interview with Brian Douglas from OpenSauce, I wanted something to start up instantly and do as little work as possible. And that's exactly what Vite is. It's a build tool to help you start up your project instantly. When coding, you have to rerun your code all the time. If this takes 3 more seconds every single time, that quickly adds up to tons of wasted time, losing focus and dropping productivity. This is what Vite solves. It speeds up your development and feedback cycle so you can immediately see the changes you make no matter how big your code base becomes. This will make you a faster developer and greatly improve your DX or developer experience. In the rest of this course, you will learn how to build React apps with Vite, how to work with static assets, using environment variables, using TypeScript for development, building for production, configuring and extending Vite, HMR and what makes Vite fast, and much more. And because this is Scrimba, you'll have lots of challenges to practice what you learn. Who am I? I'm Sean Dashjian, teacher at Scrimba and mentor at Pro Coding Mentor. You can find me on Discord if you have any questions. And we reached the end of this quick intro to the course. Here's a quick recap of what we learned so far. You know what Vite is at a high level, why you use Vite as a developer, and you got an overview of what you will learn through the rest of this course. Alright, Vite is a build tool. So let's start building. I'll see you in the next lesson. Let's start building with Vite. In this course, we'll create a React project, but know that Vite is framework agnostic, and you could use your favorite framework or no framework at all. At the time of this recording, Vite requires Node.js version 18 plus or 20 plus to run. If you don't already have Node.js on your machine, you could click on this image, which will take you to the download page for Node.js. Let's verify that we have Node.js installed. In the terminal, I'll enter the command node version. I'll hit enter and I get node version 20. Great. We'll also need a Node package manager. We'll use npm, which comes with Node.js if you installed it from the Node.js download page. Let's check our npm version. It's version 10. Awesome. With that out of the way, let's create our project by entering the command npm create vite at latest. I'll hit enter. You may be asked to install the create Vite package. I'll hit enter to accept. Vite asks for the name of the project. I'll put a dot here, which means I want Vite to scaffold the React project in the current directory rather than creating a new directory. I'll hit enter. Next, I can select a framework or vanilla. Here I'll
project name disuruh pilih package. Apakah udah dipakai sebelumnya ya? Pilih.
select React Hit enter. Next, let's pick a variant. Here I'll pick JavaScript. Hit enter. We'll see how easy it is to switch to TypeScript if we choose to. Vite quickly scaffolded the project for us and even gave us the command for what to do next. Let's follow them. I see at the bottom two commands, npm install and npm run dev. Let's clear the terminal here. First I'll enter npm install, hit enter. This will install all the
Loh, nggak perlu ngapa-ngapain. Hard expose is hard. Show help. Oke. Oh, udah.
dependencies for Vite, React, and other dependencies. Super, all our dependencies installed. Let's start the Vite dev server. I'll enter the command npm run dev, hit enter, and Vite starts up the dev server instantly. If you are on your local machine, you could go to localhost port 5173 to see the app. Here in the Scrimba IDE, I'll click on this icon.
Oh iya. Oh ini. Start. I see.
Icon at the top right corner of the screen, which will bring up a mini browser for us. And this is the React project that Vite created for us. Awesome. Notice how fast the dev server started. This is one of the many areas.
Bentar dulu. Wait. Ini kan?
Where Vite shines. Fast dev server startup time. And that's it. You now have a scaffolded React project which you can build on. Let's go over the anatomy of what Vite created here. First, we have index.html, and this is the entry point of our project. Next, we have the source directory or SRC.
Main GX. Ada git bahasanya di sini. Oke.
Which includes your source code, and also an assets directory, which includes the static assets which you want to optimize. We also
Jujur keren. Kok tapi nggak ada hasilnya? Gimana sampai begini? Oh ini. Oh. AJX main JX. Oh ini ada ya. So what is this? Oh itu CSS-nya. React. Session. Nah, yeah.
Also have a public directory for the static assets that you don't want to optimize. More on this later. We also have a package.json, which includes all the dependencies and the npm scripts. And very importantly, we have vite.config.js. This includes the Vite configuration and list of plugins. More on this later. And we just reached the end of our lesson. Excellent job. You just scaffolded your first React project with Vite. Let's go over what we learned in this lesson. First, you learned how to start a new project with Vite. You saw how fast Vite's dev server starts. And lastly, we went over the anatomy of a React project scaffolded with Vite. Now that we have our project scaffolded and ready to go, let's dig into the awesome developer experience Vite provides. I'll see you in the next lesson.
Mm,
Let's start building with Vite. In this course, we'll create a React project, but know that Vite is framework agnostic, and you could use your favorite framework or no framework. In this lesson, you will experience how fast developing with Vite is. This is Scrimba, and here we learn by doing. So let's start off with a challenge to get your hands on the keyboard. What you see right now is an empty directory. Your task is to create a new React project using the command npm create vite at latest, identical to what you just saw me do in the previous lesson. Make sure to scaffold the project in the current directory and select React as the framework and JavaScript as the language of choice. Go ahead and do that right now.
Hmm? Mm, mm,
All right, how did it go? Let's do it together. Here in the terminal, I'll type in npm create vite at latest. I'll hit enter. I'll hit
yeah.
enter again to install the create vite package.
Sorry. Iya kan?
All right, how did it go? Let's do it together. Here in the terminal, I'll type in npm create vite at latest. I'll hit enter. I'll hit enter again to install the create vite package. I'll put a dot. I'll select React and JavaScript. Awesome. I'll install the dependencies with npm install. Awesome. All dependencies installed. Let's clear the terminal and start the Vite dev server. npm run dev. Here is our app up and running. Great. This is the boilerplate React app that Vite creates. It has the Vite and the React logos, and there's a simple counter here where I could click on it and it will increase the count. Let's say let's add up to 3. Cool. While the dev server is still running, let's use the boilerplate React app that Vite gave us to demonstrate some key Vite features. Vite uses hot module replacement, or HMR for short, over native ES modules. We'll learn more about this later in the course, but in a nutshell, this means that rather than bundling the entire code to serve it up to the browser whenever there's a change, Vite just replaces the part of the code that got changed. This enables Vite to achieve fast dev server startup time, as we saw earlier, and fast updates while the dev server is still running, without blowing away the application state. We already saw how fast Vite dev server startup time is. Let's experience how fast its updates are. Let's say we want to add a header in the UI right above the logos here. We'll have it say something like hello Vite. To do that, let's create a React component and then add it to the UI. Here in the source directory, I right click to add a new folder, call the folder components, hit enter, and inside of components, I'm going to right click to add a new file, call the file header.jsx. Let's get the mini browser out of the way so we can code up our component. Here I'm going to export a default function, call the function header.
Coba.
Following React naming conventions for components. And then I'll open curly braces and I'm going to return. Let's open parentheses, and here I'm going to add a header element inside of which let's add an H1 that says hello Vite. Closing the H1. Command S to save this component. Great. Back in app.jsx, I'll type in import Vite. Closing the H1. Command S to save this component. Great. Back in app, an H1 that says hello Vite. Closing the H1. Command.
Aduh, mati. Ulah tadi Iya, apa sih? Itu kayak
.jsx, I'll type in import header from ./components / header. Cool. Let's bring back the mini browser here so you can see the change when we make it. Here at the very top, right before the logos div, I'm gonna add the header component with a / and close. Now let's keep an eye on the UI here, and as soon as I save this file, we'll see how quick the UI gets updated. Ready? Here it is. Command S. Boom, the header appears in the UI instantly. And notice how the counter here still counts to 3, meaning the update to the UI did not blow away the application state. This is hot module replacement over native ES modules in action. While the dev server is still running, let's add another component, this time a footer that says copyright 2025, all rights reserved. Here in components, I'm going to right click, select new file. This time, let's call it footer.jsx, hit enter. And here, similar to the header, I'll have an export default function, this time called footer, open close parens. Then we're going to return, this time, a footer. And inside of that, let's add a paragraph that says copyright 2025, all rights reserved. Let's close the paragraph. Save the file here, and back in app.jsx, we want to add the footer at the very bottom here, let's say right below this paragraph. Let's make that a
Berarti kan udah ya, udah balik ke NCX, paragraf paling bawah, X, which X, if E, C, bernama use kayak mana? Mulai penyakit ini. Bisa paham. Tidak pernah digunakan. Bukannya udara sih. Udah lah. Oh ini. Iya.
challenge for you. Go ahead and bring in that component and add it to the UI, and make sure to see how fast the UI gets updated when you save the file. Go ahead and do that right now.
Tadi udah. Wow. Kan udah tadi. Ini bisa. Ini malas. Enggak mau. Apa sih?
All right, did you see it? Let's do it together. Here in the imports, I'll bring in the footer component, and the name of the file is also footer. At the very bottom here, let's bring in the browser here to see the change happen right away. Here it is. At the very bottom, right below the paragraph, I'm going to add the footer / close the angle bracket. Now, as soon as I save the file with Command S, we see the footer added instantly at the bottom. Awesome. And we reached the end of this lesson. Super duper. This was a quick tour into fast developer experience with Vite. Let's recap what we learned in this lesson. First, you experienced firsthand fast DX or developer experience. You learned the difference between traditional bundling versus HMR over native ES modules, and you saw how that led to fast updates in the UI. In the next lesson, we'll learn how to work with static assets like images in Vite. See you there.
Hmm.
Images, fonts, text, and media files in one of two ways, either by optimizing them in your build or by copying them as is. Optimizing them in the build includes adding a hash to the file name for caching, inlining the file if its size is less than 4 kilobytes. Inlining here means converting the file to base 64 and including it in the HTML rather than as a separate file. This will prevent an extra HTTP request. And lastly, you can perform further optimizations on the file using plugins. In order for Vite to perform those optimizations, you need to place your image files in the source directory and import the files in your JavaScript using a relative path. Let's see an example of this. Here in our React app, we see that the React logo is placed in the source directory, specifically in the assets directory, react.svg. This file is imported using the relative path ./assets/react.svg. Let's head over to the terminal and build this app using the command npm run build. I'll hit enter, and we see that Vite has built the app in the dist directory. We see the dist directory here.
Is
Here added on the side, and also Vite has listed the files that it added to the list directory. We specifically see that inside
yeah. Masa itu putus. mana? Masa create lagi? npx.
Inside of the dist directory, there's an asses directory added, and inside of that, here we see the React logo SVG added, but with a hash added to the name. Since the file size is greater than 4 kilobytes, it did end up as a file by itself rather than getting inlined in the HTML as base 64. Let's take a look at the other way to handle static assets. For files that you don't need to get optimized, for example robots.txt, you place them in the public directory. Those files will get copied as is to the build without any optimizations. An example here is the Vite logo that we see placed in the public directory. It is imported in our code using an absolute path /vite.svg. If we head down to a terminal and list the files in the dist directory, we see that the vite.svg file was copied as is without a hash in the name. There was no optimization made to this file. Now that you have an understanding of the two ways to handle static assets in Vite, let's practice with a challenge. In the source/assets directory, you currently see one image file for the React logo. As soon as I snap my fingers, you'll also see that I added a scrimba.png file for the Scrimba logo. I'd like you to import this file in app.jsx using a relative path just like the React logo and add it as a link in the UI right below the React logo. After you do that, build the app and investigate where Vite places the file and under which name. Go ahead and do that right now. Where Vite places the file and under which name. Go ahead and do that right now. Build the app and investigate where Vite put this file in app.jsx using a relative path just like the React logo and add it as a link in the UI right below the React logo. After you do that, build the app and investigate where Vite places the file and under which name. Go ahead and do that right now.
is ko lupa. This. Belong.
How did it go? Let's do it together. Here in app.jsx, I'll add a line below the import for the React logo, import Scrimba logo from, I'll add a relative path dot forward slash assets slash Scrimba dot png. Then I'll scroll down to where the React logo is being displayed, copy that part, and replace the URL with scrimba.com instead of React logo. Here we'll say Scrimba logo, and for the alt text also I'll say Scrimba. Cool. Let's bring our browser here. I'll save the file in the terminal. Let's run the dev server npm run dev. And here we see the Scrimba logo got added next to the React logo. Awesome. Back in the terminal, I'll stop the dev server. Let's build the app. npm run build. Hit enter. And here we see the Scrimba logo got added with a hash in the name. Super. We reached the end of the lesson with optimal success. Here's a recap of what we learned in this lesson. We learned how static assets are handled in Vite, what optimizations Vite provides out of the box, and how to optimize or not optimize static assets. In the next lesson, we'll learn how to use environment variables in Vite. See you there. Welcome back. Let's learn how to use environment variables in Vite. Import.meta is a web standard. To it, Vite adds an object called env, and in this object, Vite provides a number of built-in constants to use. Those constants are base underscore URL, which is a string that gives the base URL the app is being served from. Next, we have mode, which is a string that gives the mode the app is running in. This could be development or production or another mode. You can click on the list of constants that will take you to the docs to learn more. Next, we have dev and prod, and those are booleans which tell whether the app is running in development or in production. And lastly, we have SSR, a boolean that tells whether the app is running in the server. In addition to those built-in constants, Vite also grants access to your own environment variables. Those could be ones that you pass through the command line, or you could provide them in a file named .env in the root of your project. Each environment variable must start with the prefix Vite underscore all uppercase in order to be available. Here's an example .env file that contains a number of environment variables. Again, notice that each one of them has the prefix Vite underscore. In order to use an environment variable in your code, you access it like this: import.meta.env. The name of the environment variable. Alright, let's practice adding an environment variable to our app. I'll add a file .env in the root of the project. In it, I'll add an environment variable Vite underscore greeting. Alright, let's practice adding an environment variable to our app. I'll add a file .env in the root of the project. In it, I'll add an environment variable Vite underscore greeting. I'll give it the value howdy. Copy the name of this environment variable. Save the file, then head over to app.jsx. Here, let's grab the environment variable via import.
Uh,
meta.env. The name of the variable, and I'll assign it to const greeting. Lastly, I'll copy the name of this variable, scroll down and variable, save the file, then head over to variable of this environment variable, save the file, then head over to app. .jsx. Here, let's grab the environment variable via import.meta.env. The name of the variable, and I'll assign it to const greeting. Lastly, I'll copy the name of this variable, scroll down. Below the H1, I'll add an H2 here, and in curly braces, add the name of the variable, greeting. I'll close the H2, save the changes here. In the terminal, let's start the dev server with npm run dev. In our mini browser, we see our greeting.
serta
Great. Now it's your turn. Give me a second to set up a challenge for you. Alright, here's your challenge. We want to display the IP address in the UI. For that, we'll be using an API called IPFI. This is the URL of the API. I'd like you to add an environment variable and assign it the value of this URL, and then use that environment variable in app.jsx, specifically inside a use effect hook that I added for you here. You want to grab that environment variable and use it here so that we can grab the IP address, which we will use the value of to set a state variable called IP address. Lastly, use that state variable in the UI to display the IP address. I outlined the steps here. Go ahead and do that right now. All right, how did it go? Let's go through it together. I'll copy the URL here, head over to add an environment variable Vite underscore API underscore URL. I'll give it the value of the URL, save the changes here, and app.jsx will access it using import.meta.env. The name of the environment variable. And lastly, we want to use this IP address, which is a state variable in the UI. I'll head down to the JSX, and here, right below the greeting, I'll add an H3, say something like your IP address is, and then in curly braces, add our state variable here. I'll close the H3, save the changes here, bring back our terminal, start our dev server, and here in the mini browser, scroll down, and here is our IP address. Super. Well done. We reached the end of this lesson and we're halfway through the course. Let's do a recap of everything we learned in this lesson. We learned about the built-in constants provided by Vite. We learned how to add an environment variable. And lastly, we practiced how to use an environment variable in our code. At this point, I think it's time to change things up a bit and explore a new territory. Let's learn how to use TypeScript in a Vite project. I'll see you in the next lesson. A quick side note here, the approach you just learned in the previous lesson to add environment variables in your Vite app is what you'd want to do if you are working on a project on your local machine. When you're creating a scrim in Scrimba after you finish this course, it is best to use Scrimba's own built-in mechanism for environment variables. This will keep all your environment variables in one central location and make
Yeah.
them available for all your scrims.